Why is it always the same story? So that means Nas made all of that stuff up.
Obviously, like Nas made Ether, and that's gonna be forever. You know, I made Takeover. Yeah, I made Takeover. You know, but you offended Jay-Z. Him. Put it like this. Why? Let's take it to money. How much money do you think Jay-Z make off my catalog versus what I make off it? Next subject.
DMX made all of that stuff up.
I had respect for him after that until he became the president of Def Jam. And I ain't gonna say too much more about it, but you know what it is. There's a difference between doing wrong and being wrong. And at one point, you were being wrong. He is talented, but there's no heart. There's no soul behind it. He is talented, but is strictly motivated by money.
He was beefing for a minute with, 50.
There's an accusation about Jay-Z and Diddy and a teenager. This is on your, yeah, it says, I don't know what's going on, but are we still gonna have the Super Bowl? I'm just asking for a friend.
Yeah, I'm asking for Kendrick.
Dame and Dipset for a while.
Jay-Z told Dr. Dre or Eminem that he didn't want you to perform part of that Super Bowl they had a couple years ago. Why do you think that is?
Our culture is competitive, but I think when it goes past the music itself to blocking things in business, I don't understand that.
How many betrayals we talked about with Jay? This ain't the first one. So for me, I'm like, big deal. He everybody over. We all know Jay. So once he does what he did, how he did Roc-a-Fella, why do you think he'd do anything else? That's Jay. Those principles don't mean anything. Jay runs with the bag, period. That's it.
Lawbreeze and Gentlegrams, the Marcy mogul gained power in the projects pushing product at the onset of a change in hip-hop's optics. Pac and Big were gone, the genre needed change, and Jay had reigned supreme. A decade spent with Dame to make a name inside the music scene. Along the way, Ye, Cole, B, Ree, and more made Jay a wealthy guy, and a target out at war with rumors of Illuminati ties. You want Jay's darkest secrets? Nicki's Twitter, they will lie. Will Jay reply with defamation suits and get the haters silenced? Or do you believe that he was out with Epstein on that island? Tyrants tearing down the Titan, frightened vitriol and violence. Please be liking and subscribe, and let's unpack this with preciseness.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.
Right now in 2026, Jay-Z is kind of in a weird spot. A spot nobody would have predicted 30 years ago when he was pressing up copies of Reasonable Doubt out of his own pocket because no major label would even sign him. He's now worth $2.6 billion, one of the richest musicians on the planet, wildly considered the greatest rapper of all time. His debut album, Reasonable Doubt, that no major label wanted to release, has now been inducted into the Grammy Hall of Fame in 2025.
Just in life, you got to keep showing up until they give you all those accolades you feel you deserve, until they call you the greatest of all time.
Again, no major label wanted to sign him. That didn't matter. He launched Roc Nation, which became one of the most powerful entertainment companies in the world. A company so powerful that some of the biggest figures in hip-hop accused the company of practices as insane as sacrificing and witchcraft.
So apparently, Beyonce is being accused again of doing black magic. Now here's what I'm gonna say. Everybody ain't lying. I spent probably a week doing research on all the people that they were connected with, and all of them are connected to some sort of black magic, some sort of witchery, okay?
I guess you gotta perform a lot of sacrifices to become the first solo hip-hop artist inducted into both the Songwriters Hall of Fame and the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. If you stay completely off the internet and just look at all of Sean Carter's actions and accomplishments at face value, then by any measure, it is undeniable that he won at life. Superstar wife, a strong family unit, billions in the bank, and a career that will be remembered forever. So why does it also simultaneously feel like the walls are closing in on Jay-Z and his reputation?
Rap icon Jay-Z's name has surfaced in a new batch of documents released by the U.S. Justice Department related to Jeffrey Epstein.
In January 2026, the Department of Justice released over 3 million pages from the Jeffrey Epstein files, and Jay-Z's name was in there. Not in the Epstein flight logs, not in his address book, not tied to any verified evidence or criminal investigation, but his name appeared in an anonymous tip to the FBI hotline from 2019, submitted by someone who claimed to have woken up in a room with Jay-Z and Harvey Weinstein. The DOJ itself acknowledged these tips could be quote-unquote fake or falsely submitted. And even though there was of course no charges, no investigation, in the internet age a mention is enough to raise a lot of eyebrows and become a massive headline. And the Epstein files are just the latest chapter. The biggest public statement Jay-Z has made in years wasn't a new music release, it wasn't a business deal. It came in December 2024 when he had to publicly deny allegations that he had R-worded a 13. the Houston attorney Tony Busby filed a lawsuit on behalf of a Jane Doe that claimed Jay-Z and Diddy assaulted her at an MTV VMAs after party in the year 2000. Jay-Z responded immediately and more angry than we have arguably ever seen him in the public light, letting the world know that his lawyer received what he deemed a blackmail attempt, saying that what we had calculated was the nature of these allegations and the public scrutiny would make me want to settle. No, sir, it had the opposite effect. And with that, this bombshell of a lawsuit was ultimately withdrawn with prejudice in February of 2025. Jay-Z's private investigators had gathered evidence that pointed to serious issues within the case, including a recorded conversation where the accuser had said that her lawyer Tony Busby, quote-unquote, pushed her towards naming Jay-Z in the case. It is important to note, though, that the accuser does maintain she stands by her claims. Meanwhile, Jay-Z stands by his because he still has a defamation lawsuit out for both Tony Busby, the lawyer, and the accuser that remains ongoing. But it's not just Jane Does who are throwing insane allegations against Jay-Z.
Jay-Z has exhibited signs of envy, jealousy, hate, and stopping bags behind the scenes. Allegedly. Why is it always the same story? So that means Nas made all of that stuff up. DMX made all of that stuff up. And isn't it interesting how many feuds, even with females, that he's allegedly been behind as well?
Some of the biggest rappers of this generation who have publicly stated that they adopted most of their style and their blueprint from Jay-Z. They've come out and said some absolutely ruthless things on Jay-Z's name. Nicki Minaj posted in the month of this recording on Twitter that Jay-Z and Beyonce have been, quote-unquote, sacrificing children as a way of gaining and maintaining power. Before that, she alleged that Jay-Z dated Foxy Brown when Foxy was 15 and he was 23, and that he was dating Aaliyah when she was a teenager, and that when he signed Rihanna at 16, Jay-Z wouldn't let her leave until she signed the contract.
Tell me about your audition with Jay-Z. Tell me what he said to you. He said something about a window and a door. He said there are two ways to leave here. Either through the door with the deal signed or through this window, and we're on the 29th floor.
Nicki says that anyone who's went against Jay-Z has been faced with the wrath of smear campaigns by Roc Nation, and that Jay is constantly using his industry power to crush people who cross him. Ultimately, Roc Nation responded to her with a cease and desist letter, allegedly. And then you have Kanye West, the artist that Jay-Z brought into the game, mentored, collaborated with at the highest level. Kanye even dedicated the outro of one of his best albums, Graduation, to Jay-Z.
Who was hip-hop brother, who was no ID friend. When he first recorded it, the word was floating around the office that, hey man, Ye got a song talking about Jay-Z. So when Jay heard the news, he was like, well, is it good or bad?
And for all that Jay's done for Ye, you would assume this is someone Kanye would never turn on. But sure enough, the cracks started to show in the foundation of their friendship almost 10 years ago when Kanye had a breakdown at one of his St. Pablo tour dates and begged Jay-Z not to send his killers at him. This was the beginning of where Kanye and Jay's relationship would get quite turbulent, but like I asked before, for all that Jay has done for Kanye, how could things have gone so wrong behind the scenes to the point where Kanye took to Twitter in 2025 to start insulting Jay-Z and Beyonce's children?
You know, but you offended Jay-Z. Kill. Put it like this. Why? Let's take it to money. How much money do you think Jay-Z make off my catalog versus what I make off it? Next subject.
This is just one of several examples of people very close to Jay-Z completely turning on him when it's all said and done, and it raises the question, is Jay-Z an evil man getting his karma? Or is this what happens when you build something so powerful, so enormous, to the point where everybody, from the former proteges, the former partners, the conspiracy theorists, Tory Lanez' father, everyone has a reason to try and shoot you down? Well, you might be surprised to know that Jay-Z has been making enemies on his ascension to the top since day one. Brooklyn, 1982. Jay-Z was just 12 years old. His older brother, addicted to crack, had stolen jewelry from Jay-Z's dresser. That's when a 12-year-old Jay ended up shooting his brother in the shoulder because he knew his brother was about to pawn off the jewelry for some quick drug money. Years later, Jay-Z would explain that his brother again was battling serious issues, using drugs, stealing from the family, and even though Jay was the youngest, he felt he had to protect everyone else. And this wasn't necessarily a scenario of backstabbing or sabotage, but it most definitely highlights how broken the environment Jay-Z grew up in was. The Marcy Projects, where he was raised, was extremely dangerous and violent in the 1980s. Jay's Uncle Ray, his father's brother, had been stabbed and killed, and his father spent years hunting for the attacker. Jay describes how the pain that his father endured by losing his brother, combined with drugs, changed his father into someone else, and by the time Jay turned 11, his father had left the household.
My dad wasn't around and his younger brother got killed. So he spent all his nights like looking for and the cops didn't do anything. So the killer's like roaming the neighborhood. So he's going out in the middle of the night and he's looking for the guy who killed his little brother, right? But he has a family. So my mom is looking at him like, what you want? She don't have the language or the tools to tell him, man, we love you. We don't want nothing to happen to you. We need you. So how it comes out to her is, where the hell you going? You got kids here. And how it sounds to him is, you want me to choose between you and my baby brother? Now there's the fracture.
Meanwhile, his mother did everything she could to try and keep him out of trouble. She bought boom boxes so he could listen to music at home. She tried to keep him inside as much as possible because she thought it was safer than letting him roam outside, unsupervised in the area they were living in. But with supervision lacking in the household and Jay's most visible role models coming from older guys in the neighborhood who were making money hustling, selling crack, Jay-Z ended up resorting to doing the same at just 13 years old. He actually went to school with Busta Rhymes and Biggie, but ended up dropping out at the age of 16. It was only by the time he was 26 that Sean Carter became Jay-Z. He spent over a decade moving large amounts of crack, losing friends, getting into alleged shootouts, and living with constant risk that then became the foundation of the music he created. And those experiences, at least according to Jay-Z, they shaped him for the better. He sometimes describes drug dealing as giving him some sort of code of honor or integrity that he believed the music industry lacked. Plus, he learned all his money skills, budgeting, finance, all that was from selling crack. As far as any guilt he may have felt for the impact that selling crack may have had on his community, Jay admits that at the time he didn't fully grasp the harm he was bringing to his neighborhood because he was just focused on escaping it.
You were a teenager during the height of the crack epidemic. Was it a pretty rough time for you?
Pretty rough time for everyone. Like, especially, in that neighborhood, it was a plague in that neighborhood. It was just everywhere. You could smell it in the hallways.
And how did it impact you?
It was either you was doing it or you was moving it.
And you was moving it?
Yeah, I was what you consider a hustler.
Drug dealer?
It's a harsh word, yeah.
Did your mom know you were dealing crack?
No. She had a lot of trust in me. She gave me a long leash and she let me learn on my own.
But eventually, he realized there were only two outcomes attached to the line of work he was dealing in, and that was dead or in jail. So Jay-Z, who always had a passion for music, started putting his full focus towards it. The problem was, this was around the late 80s, early 90s, and hip-hop was definitely risky, to say the least, to be looked at as a guaranteed career path. Superstars weren't being born left and right, and the industry most definitely did not look at Jay-Z as one of them. Jay had rap battles with legends like LL Cool J and DMX back in the early 90s, but even with his skill set, no major label wanted to sign him.
Back in the day, he was known to seek out battles just for the love of the sport.
Busta Rhymes in high school. LL Cool J. One time I caught him coming outside the club. Genius.
Yeah, I ain't giving you no result to these things. I don't want anybody upset. You beat the Genius?
Yo, come on.
So Jay took actions into his own hands. He connected with people he knew from Harlem, Dame Dash, and Biggs, and they created Roc-a-Fella Records in 1995 with the initial main purpose of the label being to release Jay's debut album, Reasonable Doubt, by themselves. Obviously, we know it eventually spiraled into something much larger, expanding into fashion with Rockaware, signing a whole roster of artists, and later restructuring a joint venture with Def Jam that took things to a whole other level, but also was the beginning of the end. We'll touch on that shortly. Success-wise, Reasonable Doubt was a slow burner, but it eventually went on to be regarded as a unilateral classic.
Well, of course, if it's not one of the best albums of all times, it's absolutely the realest album of all time. You know what I'm saying? And just the times that we was living, what I was going through. And, I mean, that was my whole album, my whole life making that album.
And on the track list, one of the very few features actually came from Foxy Brown. Foxy and Jay met in the mid-1990s after then 14 to 15-year-old Foxy Brown was included on LL Cool J's song I Shot Your remix. A couple of years later, Jay had her on, again, Reasonable Doubt on the song Ain't No Playa, but while the album released in 1996, the song was allegedly recorded in 1994. And being born in the year 1978, this would make Foxy Brown anywhere from 15 to 16 at that time. Now, we're not going to dive into the conspiracies that are spread online from people who seem to have some sort of ulterior motive to tear Jay down. Everyone from 50 Cent, Wendy Williams, Nicki Minaj, Dame Dash, all alluding to something potentially having happened between the two. Conspiracy theories can run rampant. Let's just look at the facts.
The predators move in flock. That's what Kendrick would say, right? By the way, ain't it ironic? Kendrick says in the song, Drake's a PDF. Everybody like, yep, he telling the truth. Jay-Z's name is listed a bunch of times in the Epstein files and by the Department of Justice that came up over 20 years of investigation. And people are like, yo, this is fake. Yo, it just goes to show. Those 3 Big Macs are for me.
After collabing on Reasonable Doubt, Jay would have heavy involvement behind the scenes in the early stages of Foxy's career. She released her debut album by the time she had just turned 18, and she herself has publicly denied dating Jay-Z when she was underage.
Was I shocked when Jay said the line in Picasso Baby? Yes, because we've talked about that. We have a history that supersedes music, and we know how this business works. We sit back and we laugh at those rumors. We laugh at that. I think he began to feel the pressure because people were saying my age, the age thing. She was 15, 14. She was 15, 14. And after a while, that gets to a person. The Jay I know, the Sean I know, never comes out of character.
Now again, forget all the dating rumors aside, let's just keep it to what we've seen at face value. While the music that was coming out at that time was incredible, no doubt, some of the lyrics, when you look back on them today, are a little over the top, to say the least. Keep in mind, this is now when Foxy's around 18 and Jay-Z's 28, and he gets songs on her debut album like All B, which is, again, a great song. But it has Jay-Z and Foxy going back and forth on a verse with lyrics like, I'm too live, nasty as I wanna be, don't shake your sassy butt in front of me, for I take it there and tear your back out. This stuff ain't happened since the Mac was out. Or random ways to fit. Want to taste this stuff? Throw your face in it, effer. Nah, y'all can't touch her. My S drive all night like a trucker. So a lot of the dating rumors in general came because you got duets like this, where you had Jay-Z approaching 30, recording very sexually explicit material with someone who had just turned 18. So even with their relationship being strictly business, the situation itself was kind of questionable, even if the motive was just to have some commercial success. But it's unfair to just point the magnifying lens at Jay-Z by himself. The sad reality is that dynamics like this in the entertainment industry happen all the time, where young women are hypersexualized and older executives are capitalizing off of their innocence. I mean, we see this a lot with the whole child actor industry. You guys can go down the rabbit hole of the Dan Schneiders of the world. The outcome of these young women who get exploited for entertainment, it's usually quite impactful as they end up maturing. And we could kind of see that later down Foxy Brown's life. She had some solid success leading up to her third album in 2001, but by the time her fourth album came around, it ended up being canceled when Diddy, who was the executive producer of the project, reportedly disagreed about promotion and the production strategy for it. And after this, things were never the same. A few years later, Foxy was sentenced to a year in prison, with part of that time spent in solitary confinement, and she had several other legal issues that followed her all throughout the mid-2000s. Later on, she ended up going partially deaf, which left her unable to record or perform, and by then her career was never the same. And it raises the question of whether or not, stress, trauma, the constant spotlight on her from her very early years in the entertainment industry may have contributed to the instability and struggles that she faced. There's no factual correlation, but obviously it's incredibly destabilizing and stressful for a teenager to be sucked into this type of industry, placed in a spotlight and surrounded by these older powerful figures when you're so young and naive.
I'm young. I've been 14, that's when God's 30 years old. So, oh shit. See, that's what I see. It's kind of different, and you can't really relate where we're coming from. You would never really understand what we've been.
But Foxy Brown wasn't even the worst example. When you think young iconic star in the 1990s, no name should come before Aaliyah. Aaliyah helped redefine contemporary R&B, and even though she was unable to release more than 3 albums throughout her career, her impact was undeniable. But just like Foxy, Aaliyah entered the industry at an incredibly young age through her uncle, who worked as an entertainment lawyer. Her talent was picked up on quickly, and she was introduced to R. Kelly, who became the lead songwriter and executive producer of her debut album. The album took almost a year to complete, and during that time, Aaliyah and R. Kelly grew much closer. Rumors began circulating that they were falling in love, and Aaliyah was staying at R. Kelly's house.
Everybody seems to think that y'all are either girlfriend or boyfriend or cousins.
I better go get me a white Jeep.
Well, no, we're not related at all. No, we're not. We're just very close. He's my best friend.
Yeah, cool.
Now, who found who?
In the whole wide world.
Now, how is he to work with?
Rob is great to work with because really it's not like we work because we're like really close. So it's like just fun, really. We just hang out, sing.
I don't ever remember working.
Yeah, it's just like fun.
On August 31st, 1994, just a few months after her debut album was released, Aaliyah and R. Kelly were secretly married at a hotel in Chicago. R. Kelly was 27 years old, and Aaliyah was just 15. Her tour manager later admitted to forging documents to make it appear that she was 18 so the marriage could legally take place. Once Aaliyah's family found out, the marriage was quickly annulled. People close to Aaliyah believe that she was never quite the same after that relationship with R. Kelly. Her boyfriend at the time of her death claimed that she refused to ever discuss Kelly and would say that he was just a terrible man. He reportedly said that it was emotionally impossible for him to watch interviews with R. Kelly's other victims because it reminded him of Aaliyah's behavior in the years after their marriage. That boyfriend in question was Dame Dash, Jay-Z's partner and the co-founder of Roc-a-Fella Records.
Hip-hop star R. Kelly did indeed marry his protege, the 15-year-old singer Aaliyah Houghton.
Did y'all ever talk about it? We talked about it up to the point where it hurt.
You ever have beef with R. Kelly while he was with Aaliyah?
She just wanted it left alone. So that's the thing that people would be like when Jay was doing videos with him, I was be in the video, but I'd be like, yo, what do you want me to do? And she'd be like, don't start nothing, just don't be in no shots with him.
Aaliyah and Dame met in the year 2000 and continued dating until her passing in 2001. They were even planning on getting married, and Dame to this day says that there's not a day that passes where he doesn't think about her. And that's why it was strange to many that after Aaliyah's passing, just months later, Jay-Z would go on a world tour and release 2 albums with R. Kelly. And this was really the beginning of the end for Roc-a-Fella Records.
When he did the record with Jay, that's why I was that was almost like one of the things where I was just like, he's out of here, Jay. I just let it go because I couldn't believe he did a project with her, with R. Kelly, knowing that he had raped my girl.
Dame was involved in all of Jay's business at the time, but he says that if you look at that Best of Both Worlds album that Jay and R. Kelly released, you won't see his name on it at all because he never wanted any part of it. He was strongly against Jay-Z and R. Kelly recording that album. Dame claimed that Jay-Z knew about R. Kelly's alleged abuse of young women, including Aaliyah, but still chose to collaborate with him. He even claimed that he donated his share of the profits of Jay and R. Kelly's album to a charity that Aaliyah supported. And to Dame, Roc-a-Fella was over because he didn't understand Jay-Z's morals or his decisions. This destroyed Dame's trust in Jay, but Roc-a-Fella ultimately split for a variety of reasons. From 2000 to 2004, Roc-a-Fella Records was operating under a joint venture with Def Jam Recordings, which was owned by UMG. The label was incredibly successful. Jay released albums like The Blueprint, The Black Album. They were releasing the early Camron albums, which were widely successful. And of course, they struck gold with Jay-Z's biggest protege, Kanye West, when he released The College Dropout in 2004. And you might not see too many people rocking it today, no pun intended, but their clothing line that was a spin-off of the label, Rockaware, was also generating hundreds of millions of dollars by the mid-2000s, and Jay-Z eventually sold his stake for the company in 2007 for $204 million, reportedly.
Right before we close, your man makes an announcement that he's launching another brand, S. Carter. So it devalued the brand and they left.
Tommy Hilfiger left.
Yeah, because they were like, Jay's not a part of it, we don't want it. I'm trying to make us a LVMH with different brands and Rockwear be the umbrella, but they did not understand that. And I'm arguing with them and I'm like, yo, sell my interest, man. I just want to go. I think I gave $8 million to walk with State Property and a couple of others. Soon as I leave, then Jay comes back and then they did whatever they did and sold the company without me.
However, remember that early on, Roc-a-Fella was initially started as an independent venture, which was extremely innovative at the time, right? Instead of taking advances from major labels, I mean, he couldn't because the labels were rejecting him, but Jay instead decided to co-found Roc-a-Fella to be able to control his masters and his profits. Similar to Master P's No Limit Records, Birdman's Cash Money at the beginning, the early street buzz that Roc-a-Fella generated and the independent sales gave them a lot of bargaining power when they ended up stepping into the office at Def Jam Recordings. But because the foundation of the label was rooted in independence, Jay and Dame started disagreeing over the future of the label. Jay was becoming closer to Def Jam's corporate leadership, meanwhile Dame wanted Roc-a-Fella to remain independently aggressive, but of course Jay was thinking bigger. See, Jay announced his retirement in 2003 with the Black Album, and with that retirement he ended up becoming appointed as the CEO and president of Def Jam Recordings, the same company that was distributing Roc-a-Fella's music in the years prior.
Would you ever sell your master?
No.
Never? No. It was the fight of my life. You know, from being an independent company from the beginning and then going through the Def Jam system, not really understanding how that works, and them having my masters, then going back to Def Jam as the president and then saying, okay, I'll do this job, and part of this job is my masters has to revert back to me.
This was a bit of a conflict in and of itself because by becoming president of Def Jam, Jay-Z was no longer just a co-owner of Roc-a-Fella Records. He was now an executive working for the parent company that had leverage over Roc-a-Fella itself. Like, to put it simply, Jay went from being one of 3 equal founders of the label to being aligned with the corporation that was above the label. And according to Dame Dash, he was completely blindsided by this move. He said the decision was made without him. He had no idea Jay was going to take that Def Jam presidency. And once Jay did, UMG, the company that owned Def Jam, they no longer needed the original Roc-a-Fella structure. Shortly after Jay-Z took that job, Universal and Def Jam ended up negotiating a buyout of Dame's stake in Roc-a-Fella. And Dame to this day constantly frames it as him being forced out after Jay-Z went corporate and sided with the parent company. Like, from his viewpoint, Jay's move here completely shifted the power balance of the label. Instead of it being 3 partners negotiating with Def Jam on behalf of Roc-a-Fella, one of the partners was now the boss of Def Jam. That made it easier for the corporation to consolidate ownership and basically abolish the original equal partnership structure that Dame, Biggs, and Jay had originally created. Because by 2005, Roc-a-Fella ceased functioning as the autonomous powerhouse that it had been. The artists that were on the label were absorbed more directly into Def Jam. Jay-Z remained Def Jam president until 2007. He oversaw the success and the scale of careers including Kanye, Rihanna, Young Jeezy, Neo, and more. And Dame never had even a fraction of the power that he used to within the music industry from this point going forward. Now, you could point to that being his fault. He was unable to adapt to the times. But by his account of all things, the rift began through Jay-Z's betrayal as Dame's friend with the entire Aaliyah R. Kelly situation, and it ended with Jay-Z spearheading the complete abolishment of the original Roc-a-Fella structure, which ultimately greatly served his financial interests.
I feel he robbed me, period. The way he goes about moves with my business, I'm not talking about nobody else's, but personally the way he did me was dirty. The way he did Biggs was dirty. The way he did Roc-a-Fella was dirty. So he went, told L.A. Reid, I want Roc-a-Fella, I don't want Dame and Biggs down. And we was like, damn, I'd have left. I thought that was dirty. The shit he did with Rockwear, that was dirty. When he said he wasn't going to be a part of it while I was selling it and devalued it, and then, I stepped away from it, and all of a sudden they do a big deal like that, that was dirty.
But again, there is 2 sides to every story, and on the opposite end of things, while Jay-Z assuming the role of president of Def Jam with 50% of Roc-a-Fella ending up being sold to Def Jam's parent company UMG, that definitely left Dame stranded on his own. Dame had also been concocting moves for the future of Roc-a-Fella behind Jay's back without his approval as well. The rift was most definitely not solely one-sided. In 2002, Jay-Z took a trip to the Mediterranean islands, and in his absence, Dame was allegedly completely restructuring the corporation of Roc-a-Fella as he knew it. During a media event, Dame had appointed Dipset's head leader Camron and Beanie Sigel as the new vice presidents of Roc-a-Fella. Jay had quickly spoke on the matter with the source, saying, "That's not taking effect as of yet. I think the talk is a little premature as of right now."
So me, I like to empower everybody, right? So I had given Cam, or we had given Cam a label, Dipset. Right. Of course, Cam being the Harlem dude that he is, went and made an announcement and made it sound fly. Right. I'm the vice president. He never said anything else.
You're now president of Roc-a-Fella. How did that happen? How did that come about? And what is Dame?
It's really like the title of the vice president. You know?
Well, all of a sudden, everybody was mad about it. Like, you know.
And with Beanie Sigel inches away from becoming the vice president of Roc-a-Fella, he had actually done an interview reflecting on the root of the split between the legendary labels, saying that from conversations I had with Jay, when Dame started being famous, he fell victim to the camera. I think if Dame would have played the role that Biggs did and handled business differently, maybe Roc-a-Fella would still be the force that it was. He claimed that Dame allegedly went on a lot of trips with company money and quote-unquote robbed Peter to pay Paul. And ultimately, Jay-Z had grew beyond the confines of the original business model that Roc-a-Fella had adopted when it was first conceived. And Camron, another former Roc-a-Fella artist who Dame had initially planned on appointing as the co-vice president of the label, he had a similar perception to Jay, but from a much more negative perspective. See, Camron was initially signed to Sony and released 2 albums under the label, but he muscled his way out of that deal to end up joining the Roc-a-Fella team. He had known Dame Dash from his childhood, and he said, basically, when I got over there to Roc-a-Fella, it was because Dame Dash did a favor for me, because I was at a bad label deal with Sony, and he did me a favor bringing me over to The Rock. So when I got there, I went over there very polite because they already had their situation established. So I see Jay-Z at the studio, and I'll be like, you know, let's do a song, let's do this, let's do that. And he'll just kind of nod his head. So I'm like, all right. We're just starting to heat up. He just like put himself on a couple records and I wasn't feeling what he did, so I took him off the songs. I wasn't feeling the verse. I'm not dissing him. I like Jay's music, I just wasn't feeling the verse. I'm not gonna lie. It really went south. He went somewhere or something and Dame offered me the job to be vice president. He made me an offer and Jay-Z probably felt they didn't consult with him and everything kind of went south from there. Now remember, Jay-Z retired in 2003, and by this time, Camron already had several successful albums under the label, so he was very commercially important to Roc-a-Fella during Jay-Z's absence. But once he became president of Def Jam in 2004 and Dame Dash was bought out, Camron started publicly questioning whether Jay-Z's loyalty was aligned with the artist that helped build the roster or the corporation that had just bought them out. In 2006, Cam had done an interview with Hot 97 saying, Jay is a businessman. I'm not mad at him being a businessman, but don't act like you're still the same dude. Implying, just like Dame Dash, that Jay-Z had vastly shifted away from the independent model that Roc-a-Fella had adopted. And throughout the mid-2000 years, Camron had consistently suggested that Def Jam under Jay-Z was not properly supporting the Dipset projects and was consistently accusing Jay-Z of prioritizing his corporate relationships over Harlem artists.
When he says somebody from Roc-a-Fella shot him,
Of course. That's just criminal. Like, suggesting that somebody from Roc-a-Fella shot him, that's just like, that's snitching. That's snitching. No, that's like straight snitching. I ain't even dry snitching. I thought that was dry snitching. I gotta upgrade the definition. For the record, we didn't shoot him.
Again, you have to take into account, like I mentioned before, Jay-Z was building up the careers of Kanye West, Rihanna, Jeezy, Neo, and a lot more at this time while he was the president of Def Jam. From a financial perspective, it made the most sense to invest most of your time and capital into those artists that were really spearheading the label. But it was throughout this era that you started seeing the careers of Memphis Bleek, Beanie Sigel, Camron, entirety of Dipset. They weren't seeing the same success that they saw earlier on, and Camron attributes that to where Jay-Z's priorities had lied by that point in time. They had traded multiple shots, multiple diss tracks back and forth, but that's a story for another video.
You gonna make a record coming back?
It's not anything that's urgent. Like I said, you know, my statement is out there. Record have this track. But like I said, no, it doesn't warrant a response from me.
But ultimately, by this point, you can see a consistent theme of Jay-Z doing whatever it takes to level up in his own financial life, and the people who get left behind are oftentimes not too pleased. And all of these riffs we've reviewed are nothing, in my opinion, compared to the split that we've seen occurred between Jay-Z and Kanye West. Maybe it's just my bias because I personally grew up throughout Kanye's rise, and witnessing how integral Jay-Z was within it, it's insane to think that Kanye could ever turn his back on him. But was it without reason? That's the question. See, just like Camron, it was actually Dame Dash that believed in and supported Kanye the most in the early years of his career at Roc-a-Fella. The same way Camron felt that Jay-Z had his own best interests at heart rather than that of his artists, it seemed as though the same would hold true for Ye. Kanye was a protege from the beginning, cooking up some of Jay-Z's most iconic production, but that's all he was at the time. A really great producer. Jay-Z was the best rapper alive, and for his label to start putting all this money and resource into a kid who was wearing pink polos, a backpack, rapping about what was considered untraditional at the time, from a financial perspective, it didn't necessarily make sense, but Kanye was determined to be a hip-hop superstar. You've all probably seen the videos of Kanye West going into the Def Jam offices, playing his demo tape for all the executives there, all of them ignoring him, desperately trying to make his name in the game, and according to Dame, they all took a vote on whether or not they should actually sign Kanye as a rapper to Roc-a-Fella, and Jay-Z had actually voted no.
We don't talk to him about anything. He doesn't come in unless he's mad. So like, he made a vote. It was like we had to vote. So when we did the vote for Kanye, he voted no. Voted no for Kanye. That happened.
Yeah.
That's a dumb move right there.
Yeah.
But I didn't do that. I fought for Kanye.
But with that, it was actually Dame who gave Kanye his first opportunity to present his rap skills to the entire world as a Roc-a-Fella member. This came on the 2002 track Champions, featuring Kanye West, Beanie Sigel, Camron, Twista, and Young Chris. Notice, Jay-Z was not on that record.
Spicy.
It was Dame who believed in Kanye first. It was Dame who gave him a shot. And eventually, once he got that, both Jay and Dame probably realized they struck gold because Kanye was a success pretty much out the gate. Now, like we reviewed before, Roc-a-Fella Split came on the cusp of Kanye just becoming a star, releasing his debut album, The College Dropout. And he had a tough decision to make. Either stick with Dame Dash, the guy who believed in him from the jump, or continue riding with Jay-Z, who was now the president of this major label that Kanye was signed under. And even in that moment, Kanye had admitted in interviews that he knew he was wrong for abandoning Dame. But ultimately, he decided to continue growing his career under Jay-Z's mentorship because Dame was very rough around the edges. Jay-Z was likable. Kanye wanted to learn how to be like that, how to move in the corporate world. You don't have to be right, you just gotta be liked. And that's what Kanye wanted to learn how to do. The irony in that is that as Kanye's career progressed, he pretty much became the exact antithesis of what he wanted to learn from Jay-Z, the character traits that he wanted to embody.
So Dame Dash pretty much put his stamp on you. When the Roc-a-Fella Records team broke up, you chose to stick with Jay-Z. Why did you choose to stick with him when it seems by appearance that Dame is the one that supported you in the beginning? Do you think that's disloyal?
Yep. A wise man could admit when he was wrong.
It was the moment when Roc-a-Fella split. It made more sense for me career-wise to roll with Jay, even though Dame had supported me. Yeah, supported me. And then I wonder, I say, where would we be, if I rolled with Dame? Would I have been more successful? Would I have been less successful?
This is just on the CEO level. Jay or Dame?
Absolutely, 1000% Dame Dash. Is Dame Dash the visionary?
Okay.
He the original black hipster. I'm the devil's worst nightmare. I'm Dame Dash with money. And I'm also Jay and Dame combined. That's why I'm still here. Dame has the vision. I was one of Jay's best earner. Anytime he needed that beat, boom. So Dame never had to work again. Anything ever need, I'm here.
It was an interesting relationship because, of course, Jay-Z, for a large chunk of the time that Kanye spent actually becoming a superstar, Jay was retired. But once he came back into the game, how could there be two best rappers alive under the same umbrella? Kanye at this point was labeling himself a genius. Even for, at the time, kids like me, maybe 10, 11 years old when Kanye was releasing Late Registration and Graduation, it almost seemed like Jay-Z had took a back seat to let Kanye's career fully flourish. But when you look at the nuances of the relationship at the time, maybe there was a power imbalance that was already brewing that the public didn't even know. On the song Big Brother off Graduation that Kanye completely dedicates to his quote-unquote big brother, Jay-Z, he raps bars like, Big Brother got a show up in Madison Square. And I'm like, yeah, we're gonna be there, but not only did I not get a chance to spit it, Carlene told me I could buy 2 tickets. meaning like he had to buy tickets to his mentor Jay-Z's show at Madison Square and wasn't able to actually get on stage to share the moment with him. But ultimately, Kanye's loyalty would, of course, reside with Jay for several years to come. I mean, you guys probably all know the reason why he interrupted Taylor Swift at the VMAs. It was all to defend Jay-Z's wife's honor, right? We would also see the two collaborate on the 2011 classic album. Yes, I'm going to say classic. It was a classic to me. Watch the Throne. All this further proved that Jay and Kanye's relationship was stronger than anyone could imagine. But this is where the cracks started to show. About a year after Watch the Throne released, Kanye got into a relationship with reality TV star Kim Kardashian, and this is really where the public saw a shift from Kanye turning into Ye. By the time his next album rollout came about for Yeezus, he was incredibly frustrated throughout all the interviews he did, bringing a more manic energy than we had ever seen before, feeling shunned by the fashion elites, trying to make his name in the shoe game with his Yeezy sneakers, and teaming up with Rick Rubin to go absolutely anti-industry with the sequencing and sound of the Yeezus project. Everything about that album was a massive middle finger to the industry, but Kanye received a middle finger he probably never would have imagined getting. On May 24th, 2014, Kanye and Kim Kardashian got married in Forte de Belvedere in Florence, Italy. Sorry for mispronouncing that name. And one couple noticeably missing from the wedding was Jay-Z and Beyonce. Around this time, we would see security camera footage leak of an elevator incident where Beyonce's sister had attacked Jay-Z, and a few years later, we would hear Beyonce open up about the issues that Jay and B had within their household. So, in a sense, it makes sense that Jay-Z and Beyonce were missing from the wedding if they were going through some marital issues of their own. However, in a 2018 interview with Charlemagne, Kanye would open up admitting that he never actually confronted Jay-Z on missing his wedding, but to this day, regardless of whatever issues Jay-Z was going through, it still hurts him that he didn't make the effort to make the appearance at that incredibly important date, regardless of whatever was going on.
If it's family, you're not going to miss a wedding.
What do you think it was?
I'm not sure. I'm past it, but at the time I was hurt about it.
Did you ask him?
I don't think I ever asked him that question directly. Maybe talking through someone I worked with him and
Now, 2 years before this interview, but also 2 years after Kanye and Kim's wedding, Kanye West would display another gesture of loyalty to Jay-Z when he became part owner of Jay-Z's streaming company, Tidal, and released his 2016 Life of Pablo album exclusively on the streaming platform, completely sacrificing the opportunity to have a massive first week impact with that project, all so that Jay-Z's company can reap the benefits of hosting the project on its native platform. Now, by that same breath, in the same year, Drake had actually publicly rejected a partnership with the company Tidal to instead team up with their rival, Apple Music, and drop his Views album exclusively on that streaming platform. Now, this ruffled some separate feathers between Jay-Z and Drake. Spicy. Especially because Jay-Z had been managing Meek Mill under his Roc Nation company, and Meek Mill obviously was beefing Drake at the time. Drake even alluded to Jay-Z making some calls behind the scenes to try and tear down Drake, not just for the fact that he was beefing one of Jay's artists, but also because he rejected joining Jay's roster at Tidal. On the 2015 track 30 for 30, Drake rapped, "Never knew I'd be rapping from this perspective, but I'm not really sure what else you expected when the higher-ups come together as a collective with conspiracies to end my run and send me a message." He even did an interview reflecting on the beef with Meek Mill, where he alluded to the fact that DJ Drama got calls from a quote-unquote higher-up who had been affiliated with Meek Mill, allegedly pressuring DJ Drama to leak the ghostwriting Drake reference tracks from Quentin Miller so that Meek Mill can have some ammo in his beef with Drake. Now, I bring this up not to display how Jay-Z behind the scenes may have been attempting to tear Drake down, who was becoming one of the biggest artists in hip-hop at the time, but instead to reflect on how Kanye's loyalty to Jay-Z and his company Tidal may have actually backfired in ways Kanye would have never expected. On his St. Pablo tour, the concert he was doing in support of his Life of Pablo album that was again released exclusively on Jay-Z's streaming platform Tidal, he went on a long-winded rant on one of the last shows of the tour before he was eventually hospitalized, and he revealed some interesting tidbits about what was going on behind the scenes. He had said that him and Jay were supposed to be on Drake's album Views, but because of internal politics, the beef between Drake and Meek Mill, the rifts between Apple Music and Tidal, Jay-Z had pulled both Kanye and Jay's verses off of the project. He also admitted that Jay and him hadn't been on speaking terms, and in a disturbing plea of his own safety, Kanye had begged Jay-Z live on stage to quote-unquote not send his killers at him. And it wasn't just one night of a rant. There were several nights on that tour where Kanye went off on different industry politics related to Jay-Z, saying that Jay-Z only gave him a phone call, not a visit, after Kim Kardashian, his wife, got robbed in Paris.
Call me after the robbery, you say how you feeling. You want to know how I'm feeling? Come by the house. Bring the kids by the house. And he's like, oh shit, the dog is on this shit. Then Jay thought about it out of respect for Meek Mill, so he didn't want to be on the track. Then I said, look, I call Drake, I call Meek, I call y'all. We got to sponsorship, we got to let people have this song. But then it went out of that territory, it went into some title, some political shit, some shit about percentages on songs. I can't take this shit, bro.
By Kanye's account, at this point, Jay-Z had pretty much completely abandoned Ye, and that's why by 2017, the following year, Kanye completely abandoned Tidal. Reports started swarming in that Kanye left the streaming platform because the company, quote-unquote, owed him money. Remember, he released one of the biggest albums of his career exclusively on Tidal, but Tidal had said Kanye never held up to his end of the deal. And if you were around for this period of time, then you probably remember how massive Life of Pablo was. This was the year that streaming had exploded, but at the same time, people were still buying physical copies, actual CDs. If you look at Drake's Views from that year, that's the highest selling album he ever had, with 1 million copies sold in the first week. You can only imagine that Kanye's Life of Pablo, if it was on every streaming platform from Spotify to Apple Music, and there were actual CDs in store, and considering the fact that this album came 3 years after his previous album, this album would have went absolutely crazy, guys. This album would have sold at least over 800,000 copies in the first week. But Kanye sacrificed all of that just to have the album exclusively on Tidal in order to help out his big brother, Jay. But in that same year, Jay-Z would release, in my opinion, one of his best albums, 444, where he would get incredibly personal, not just about his issues with Kanye, but also about his infidelity with Beyonce. But that's also another story for another video. Let's focus on Kanye here. On the opening track, Kill Jay-Z, Jay-Z was professing the death of his ego, rapping, "You walking around like you're invincible. You dropped out of school, you lost your principles. I know people backstab you, I felt bad too, but this F everybody attitude ain't natural. You ain't a saint, this ain't kumbaya." Now, here it's interesting because he's talking about his own ego and how he was backstabbed in the industry and adopted this F everybody attitude, but ultimately, he's really talking about Kanye here, right? He makes vague metaphors to the college dropout, saying you dropped out of school. He makes reference to the name of Kanye's child, Saint, by saying, you're not a saint. This ain't kumbaya. Kumbaya being a spiritual chant meant to represent peace. Jay-Z is saying here, there is no peace. He continues saying, but you got hurt because you did Cool by Ye. You gave him 20 million without blinking. He gave you 20 minutes on stage. What was he thinking? F wrong with everybody is what you're saying. But if everybody's crazy, you're the one that's insane. Crazy how life works. Basically here saying he was shocked at how he gave Kanye all these opportunities, right? He put 20 million in his lap. He gave him that record deal with Roc-a-Fella. And what did Kanye do in return? He went on stage on that same Pablo tour, started talking about Jay-Z's wife, his family, and airing out their personal grievances. But Jay-Z caps it off to say, if it's everyone around you that's acting crazy, maybe you're the one that's truly insane. Questioning if he's the one doing wrong or if it's everyone around him that keeps taking for granted the opportunities that he gives them. He would also sit down for an interview that year and state that Kanye crossed a line in their relationship when he started mentioning Jay's family on a public stage. They've gotten over bigger issues in the past, but the fact that Kanye aired out family drama in a public setting, that was taking things too far. A year later, Jay-Z and Beyonce would team up for a collaboration album, The Carters, where they would have a song called Friends, and finally Jay-Z would actually reflect on the true reason why he missed Kanye and Kim's wedding. Throughout the verse, he reflects on everything that he's ever done for his friends, saying that I bought Emery a BM as soon as he came home. We hopped on the plane, headed straight to the Bay. That's how we turned the game on. It's game on. Referencing the fact that him and his longtime best friend Emery Vegas Jones, when he came home from prison, were sitting courtside at NBA games. He also said, Ty's mama died, I was there. My nephew died, I was there. He in my house more than I be there. More than B's even there. Ty's there, E's there, Breezy's there, Juan's there, High there, Chaka's there, Law there, they're all there, yeah. All his close associates and friends, they're all still kicking it with him at his house. And he would have a line in here that kind of reflects what we would see Jay-Z do in the next few years. He said, I might stay in the house and grow out my hair. Tight circle, no squares. I'm geometrically opposed to you. Y'all like to try angles. Y'all like to troll, do you? This is a really slick geometric double entendre here. Jay would continue documenting his loyalty to the rap game, reflecting on how he helped Meek Mill attain his freedom out of prison, fighting for prison reform, saying, I'm trying to free the world. That's how deep I'm in. But closing it off, saying that if there's issues in-house between him, his wife, his family, he's not going anywhere until that's settled. That's the #1 priority before anyone else who Jay professes loyalty to. He raps, I'm not going to nobody's nothing if me and my wife are beefing. I don't care if the house is on fire, I'm dying, I'm not leaving. If y'all don't understand that, we're not meant to be friends. Of course, this was directly aimed at Kanye, who just a couple months before this album had released was again sitting down with Charlemagne for an interview where he said that he never actually spoke to Jay on why he wasn't there for his wedding and that deeply hurt him. Now, Kanye West and Jay-Z would eventually make amends briefly for a track off Kanye's Donda album in 2021 called Jail, where Jay-Z would even tease the possibility of a second Watch the Throne album.
Marilyn Manson on a remix, Jay-Z was specifically like, do not put me on a remix for Marilyn Manson. I'm like, this some shit, bro. We artists, bro. How the fuck you gonna tell me how to paint? They never forced the red hat line on my album, bro.
Remember how Jay had said that once you cross the line of mentioning family within the public, all bets are off. Well, Kanye would double down on that in 2025. And you could say what you want about Jay-Z, but to try and justify anything Kanye said in these tweets would be absolutely delusional. He basically got online and, for no reason at all, unwarranted completely, called Jay-Z and Beyonce's kids the R-word, crossing the line far beyond just mentioning Jay-Z's wife Beyonce, but now going as far as actually discussing their kids on a public forum. And Kanye's entire reasoning for this was that he was quote-unquote evil. Now, Kanye in 2026, it's important to note, has made public apologies, tried to right his wrongs by emphasizing that he was suffering a bipolar episode. But it is important to note that it was Jay-Z of all people he chose to attack on such an intense, disgusting level. We've seen plenty of other rappers go at Kanye in a much more intense fashion than Jay-Z ever did, right? I mean, Drake had a whole campaign after the Pusha T beef trying to tear Kanye West down. So why did Jay-Z receive the most brutal wrath of Kanye's Twitter fingers? Well, to quote the great Kanye West,
I guess we'll never know.
But Kanye did reveal an interesting tidbit in a live stream during the height of this Twitter finger saga where he would foreshadow a lot of what we would see to come. He called out Jay-Z and Pusha T specifically by name for quote-unquote killing his people with the music they produce and being so engulfed in this quote-unquote evil industry that they would never stand up for what was right.
If you take people like Jay-Z and fucking Pusha T, they made their living killing our people. So how the fuck they gonna stand up for our people? You know what I'm saying? But we forget that because we love Jay-Z's music so much. We love Pusha's music so much, right? But you think they would ever, Beyonce had the best for somebody else?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? You think they would ever tell the truth? No, if they told the truth about anything, they'd go to jail. You know what I'm saying? So you have liars.
Man.
Liars are now the face of our culture.
Harley Pasternak follow me to the hotel. Then keep Aaron Carter, Harley Pasternak Pusha, your trainer, Harley Pasternak, Jay-Z. You know what I'm saying? And then they be hanging around these niggas just for the money or some Mike Rubin shit.
Now, why it's interesting that Kanye mentioned Pusha T and Jay-Z in this same sentence specifically is because a couple months after this, we would actually see both Jay and Pusha T listed by name in the Epstein files. Now, like I mentioned earlier in this video, it's not exactly what you think, right? So in January 2026, the DOJ had released a bunch of Epstein files, and in there were several FBI crisis intake reports, which were essentially anonymous tip line reports that someone called and told the FBI about alleged incidents. In those intake reports, an anonymous woman claimed that she had been drugged and abused at various times, and when she recounted her experience, she mentioned Jay-Z and Pusha T by name in relation to alleged events that she cannot fully remember. Now, I'm sorry in advance for all the censoring here, but you know how YouTube gets, right? So specifically, she had said that Pusha T was one of her quote-unquote handlers in incidents, and she also described how one time she woke up in the presence of Jay-Z and Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein after she had been drugged.
In your thoughts on Donald Trump and what it means for incarceration?
You know what? This is a labor of love for Jay, and as a result, he's my friend. We're here to talk about that and nothing else.
Again, it's important to note that these mentions did not come from Epstein's personal emails, his flight logs, investigation evidence, any law enforcement findings about Jay-Z or Pusha T themselves. They came from an unverified anonymous tip that was logged by the FBI and later made public from the Epstein document dump. To put it simply, someone once called the FBI and made allegations that when she was telling her story, they included the names of both Jay-Z and Pusha T. These allegations were recorded, published in the Epstein files, but never verified as actual facts. No actual cases were created out of these incidents from this anonymous tip, and they were not part of Epstein's own documents. So it doesn't represent any confirmed evidence about Pusha T or Jay-Z. It's just interesting that Kanye West decided to mention them in the same breath when talking about industry control and what goes on behind the scenes. Also, the recount of these stories happened in 2007 for Pusha T when he was, not close to the star that he is today. He was battling label issues with Jive. He was still releasing albums with his brother as the Clips. And while, he released classic projects there, don't get me wrong, they weren't necessarily, selling millions of records or putting themselves in rooms where they'd be amongst powerful Hollywood elites. They were actually fighting the system, right? They were in like a multi-year lawsuit against their own record label. And with Jay-Z, the reports that came out where he was actually named by the anonymous tip, she was recounting events that she says occurred allegedly in the year 1996 when Jay-Z had just put out his debut album Reasonable Doubt. And we reviewed back then how Jay-Z, he was struggling to even get a major label deal at the time, so much so that he had to even start his own independent record label just to put out his first project. So I never touched on this stuff on this channel because it was kind of very flimsy information, I guess you could put it like that. But, when we're looking at everything face value, this is all we have here. But it was interesting that they mentioned that Jay-Z and Harvey Weinstein were together in this incident because Jay-Z actually did have a relationship with Harvey Weinstein. Many people also point to the fact that Jay-Z had what seemed to be a pretty decent friendship with Diddy, who he was also tied up in another lawsuit against. When Diddy ended up getting arrested, 50 Cent, who of course we know has been on a tirade against Diddy on social media, he also has made implications that Jay-Z may have been a part of this, corrupted power circle that was run by Diddy, stating in an Instagram post that Jay-Z's been in hiding ever since Diddy got arrested. We also know that Nicki Minaj has made a ton of allegations against Jay-Z, which, while I believe to be kind of a symptom of some sort of strange episode, it does beg the question, what exactly is her incentive to go on this complete tirade of someone who she once called a massive inspiration to her career? I mean, she's admitted in these, Fury allegations against Jay-Z that he has quote unquote stopped bags or blackballed industry figures when they go against her. So what incentive would she actually have to try and tear his reputation down with, some of the most brutal accusations we've ever heard another celebrity place upon Jay-Z? All for the sake of what? Fighting for the truth? I mean, she's gone as far to say that Jay-Z was operating a sea trafficking ring to gain power. I mean, guys, I can make an hour-long video detailing all the allegations Nicki Minaj has made against Jay-Z because there's a freaking laundry list, but ultimately, she kind of says it all derives from her being cheated out of millions of dollars when Jay-Z actually ended up selling the streaming platform Tidal because she was also a part owner. She said she only got around $1 million and she was supposed to get $9 million. She says Roc Nation, Jay-Z's company, has been blackballing her. She was the one who reemerged these rumors of Jay-Z allegedly dating Foxy when she was underage, being involved with Aaliyah when she was a teen, and beginning to date Beyonce when she was also a minor. She also accused Jay-Z of allowing evil to be done to black people by his associates and staying silent, saying that he was involved in unethical business practices. And of course, these rants really started ramping up when Lil Wayne, for whatever reason, thought he was snubbed from the 2025 Super Bowl halftime show and instead they gave it to Kendrick Lamar. Nicki Minaj had said that this was Jay-Z's way of seeking revenge on his longtime, friends turned rivals, Drake and Birdman. Now, that's an interesting story in and of itself because the way that Jay-Z actually became a powerful figure within the Super Bowl halftime show event planning situation, that spurred up a whole other set of controversies that kind of ties back into what Nicki was saying about Jay-Z, doing evil behind the scenes and blackballing people. Again, I don't really want to add validity to what Nicki was saying. I think that a lot of this stuff is her kind of just going off the deep end, but this situation is kind of interesting to document because in August of 2019, Jay-Z ended up standing next to the NFL commissioner, Roger Goodell, and he announced that Roc Nation was now partnering with the league as a live music entertainment strategist and social justice collaborator. They labeled it the Inspire Change Initiative. And from that moment, Roc Nation co-produced every Super Bowl halftime show that we've seen going forward. And I think they've done a great job at that. But for a lot of people, this actually felt wrong. Not exactly the business deal itself, but the context of everything behind it. Because Colin Kaepernick, the NFL quarterback who had kneeled during the national anthem in 2016 to protest police brutality and racial injustice, he had been effectively blacklisted by the league. No team had signed him ever since he had taken a knee. Jay-Z at the time was, really heavy into his prison reform movement, and he had actually supported Kaepernick, but here he was, now cutting a deal with the very organization that had buried Colin Kaepernick. And when he was asked about it, Jay-Z said, "I think we've moved past kneeling, and I think it's time to go into actionable items." And this kind of statement seemed very, measurable. It seemed reasonable until you realize that the man who had started the kneeling hadn't been offered any actionable item. It's just simply unemployment. Kaepernick's wife, Nessa Diab, had actually called the issue out on Hot 97, saying, "I don't mind you doing a business deal, but I do mind you wrapping it in social justice when you're working with an organization that denies someone an opportunity." She flatly denied that Jay-Z had spoken to Colin Kaepernick before the deal and said that Colin was never included in any discussion, and that when Jay-Z finally did talk to Kaepernick, the conversation was left in a very bad place. And once Nicki Minaj had actually called out Jay-Z on Twitter in 2025, Nessa Diab had stepped back into the conversation, posting on Twitter that Roc Nation allegedly accepted a deal for $5 million per year for 5 years from the NFL specifically to help the league move past the controversy surrounding Colin Kaepernick's blackballing, to change the narrative from protests to Super Bowl performances, essentially. She tried to draw a direct line from what happened to Colin Kaepernick to what was now happening with Nicki Minaj to say that I saw it happen to Colin and I called it out years ago.
And how the NFL, yes, they did use Jay-Z to smooth it over. That's why you're getting, I'm sure, great shows that I do not watch or support. I don't care who's on that stage. I don't care. I don't watch that league. Because it doesn't change the fact that they wrongfully punished Colin for his peaceful protest. Colin was not protesting his employment. No. He was protesting police killing black people, systemic racism. And the worst part about during that time were the smear campaigns that were happening behind the scenes to try to discredit Colin publicly, to sway people to think that Colin was okay being blackballed or he was asking for a lot of money to play again. He was never offered a job the minute he protested. Never. And no, like I said then, Jay-Z never spoke to Colin before he made that deal with the NFL. No. He only spoke to Colin after he made that deal, and he was okay with the deal and knew exactly what it would do to Colin, and he was okay with it. You know how I know? I was there. I heard the conversation.
But when you look at this all in totality, Here's kind of what we're left with, right? Colin Kaepernick's no longer associated with the NFL. Nicki Minaj looks like she's digging herself a slow grave into career abolishment. Aside from Jay-Z, Kanye West has effectively blackballed himself from the entire power circle of Hollywood and industry elites. After splitting with Roc-a-Fella, Dame Dash has never built anything close to as big since. Jay-Z might have been standing next to Harvey Weinstein or Diddy at one point in time, but they're charged for crimes that they committed. Jay-Z has never been charged with any crime. Aside from disgruntled former business partners or collaborators, he's never been exposed for any factual industry malpractice. The lawsuit accusing him of R-wording 13 was withdrawn with prejudice by the accuser, with evidence gathered suggesting the accuser herself told investigators it was her attorney who pushed Jay-Z into the case. The Epstein files mention of his name came from an anonymous, unverified FBI tip, not from any flight log, address book, or investigative finding. No charges followed that. No formal investigation followed that. Nicki Minaj's allegations on social media remain unverified, legally contested, and allegedly even hit with a cease and desist from Roc Nation. Kanye West's attacks came from a man who was fighting documented mental health crises, and ever since then he's expressed regret. And ultimately, what the record actually shows is a man who started a record label when no one would sign him, used it to launch the careers of Kanye West, Rihanna, J. Cole, Beanie Siegel, and many more, built Roc Nation into one of the most influential entertainment companies on the planet, became the first hip-hop billionaire, was inducted into various Hall of Fames, launched various philanthropic initiatives and projects, did a lot of good, hit a lot of milestones, but also made many decisions that many people disagreed with. Along the road to becoming a billionaire, Jay-Z built a business empire that left some of the people who helped build it feel abandoned, moving so far up the ladder that the relationships at his foundation started to crack under the weight of that ascent. The same ambition that made Jay-Z the greatest businessman in hip-hop history is the same ambition that made Dame Dash feel betrayed, that made Kanye West feel abandoned, that made critics call him a sellout when he sat next to higher-ups within the NFL. And to some people, Jay-Z is just an evil capitalist. A guy who worked with the system instead of against it. A man who got so rich, he forgot where he came from. A guy whose name shows up wherever the powerful elite gather. He's guilty of association, guilty of ambition, guilty of the sin of simply making it. But on the other end, Jay-Z is living proof that a kid from the Marcy Projects can not only survive in this world, but also win at unprecedented levels. That someone like you or me can kick down a door and actually leave it open for others to succeed. I mean, what did he say? How many billionaires came out of the Roc-a-Fella umbrella? Kanye, Rihanna, LeBron, hundreds of other creatives that got a platform that they may have never found if it wasn't for the platform that Jay-Z already built. There's a cost to everything, and the richer you get, the bigger that price. And 30 years ago, when Jay-Z was trying to become the rich, successful man he is today, pressing up copies of his Reasonable Doubt debut with his own money, not knowing if any record label or if the world would ever even care, 30 years later, the whole world cares. For better or for worse, the whole world cares. So let me know what you guys think, and I'll catch you in the next one.
I study
Rapaholics
for a living.